guys, welcome back to Quick Notes with Chris on. Today we're going to be breaking down the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. So we're going to be starting with law number 1, and there's a reason why John Maxwell actually starts with the law of the lid. That's what number 1 is called. It's because leadership ability determines your overall effectiveness. Whenever it comes to general success, business, anything like that, if you can work on your leadership ability, you're going to increase your level of effectiveness. And there's an exact reason and why he breaks that down. You see, if your leadership is an 8, your effectiveness can only ever be capped at a 7. So in terms of whatever industry you're in, whatever organization you're leading, management position you might be working in, your potential of effectiveness is directly linked to your ability to lead. Now, leadership is essentially just influence. Your ability to influence others, whether it's to spend their time in certain aspects or change their ideology, but overall follow in what it is that you're trying to get them to do. That's what leadership is. It's nothing more, nothing less. It's your ability to influence. Let's talk about an example of someone's capped leadership and why the law of the lid is so important, and understanding that developing your leadership will directly develop your income. So there was basically two people in the 30s or 40s named Dick and Maurice. Now, Dick and Maurice owned essentially just a normal hospitality business in California. Now, they ended up moving site and they moved more to a different area, a more busier area in California. And this was during the recession, so it was very difficult to make money. And what they basically specialized in was prioritizing a really quick system instead of drive-through. See, at the time, drive-through when it came to fast food involved you parked and then someone would come out and give you food. That's how it would work. You'd go up, you'd make the order, you'd go back to your car, and a waitress would come and give you the food, normally on skates, depending on the restaurant. They basically tried to prioritize this, fix it, make it as fast as possible, and ended up utilizing a fast food model that is still used today. Now, they ended up making roughly about $350,000 a year, so just over $100,000 a year each, but they were capped in terms of their potential. They were very much struggling when it came to make more. And so moving into the 50s, they understood that they needed an ability and a process to expand. Now, they already had tried before, but they failed miserably. And the reason why they failed was because they lacked leadership ability. See, what they were really good single restaurant owners, but they very much struggled when it came to vision, navigation, and just overall leadership whenever it came to opening or expanding on a new project. Now, fast forward a few more years, that's when someone called Ray Kroc came along. Now, Ray Kroc was someone whose leadership was sky high, it had no cap, and he ended up in the next 3 years opening 100 restaurants. 100 new restaurants, that restaurant being McDonald's. This is the story of McDonald's and how the two brothers ended up being restricted in terms of their leadership ability, hiring or getting in partnership with a man called Ray Kroc. And in the first 3 years, opened 100 restaurants, and 4 years after that, more than 500 McDonald's were opening and operating around America. Now, what this is an example of is the exponential ability that leadership has to multiply. See, leadership is directly linked to your effectiveness. So if you're an individual that's restricted overall, no matter what aspect you're in, whether it's coaching, whether it's teaching, whether it's literally running a business or leading a team in general, your ability to have an effective team is going to be directly linked to the leader. And there's so many examples of that, but I think the McDonald's one is a really, really awesome example because it specifically talks about how two individuals who struggled with it had the law of the lid affecting them drastically. See, they were always able to make 6 figures, and they might have even been potential definitely to be able to make 7 figures across an extended period of time. But when it came to leadership in terms of vision, navigation, all of the aspects towards leadership, they were so very much lacking in it, especially one of the main brothers. And there are multiple reasons alluding to that, but the fundamental reason is that they lacked the ability to influence. A lot of people consider the McDonald's brothers sort of arguably a little bit pushovers. They didn't have the respect of everybody around them, but what they were really awesome at was automating a system. And it just goes to show that no matter how good you might be in skill set, if your character isn't there to follow, then you're always going to be restricted in terms of income. There's so many other stories, for example, Steve Jobs and Wozniak. Wozniak was someone who had the skill set to develop Apple, but he didn't have the leadership required to make it the multi-billion, arguably trillion-dollar company that it is today. That Steve Jobs had the vision, belief, respect, and able to actually accomplish those things. So if you actually want to look towards a guaranteed model towards increasing your income, it's leadership. So many people view leadership as something that isn't necessarily for them, when in truth, you're always going to be leading yourself. The person who makes your decisions is yourself. So if you don't have yourself ingrained with the correct leadership qualities, the incorrect leadership decision-making, navigation, vision, all these different aspects that the book talks about, you're always going to be income restricted. So what you need to look towards doing is basically identifying the different aspects of your leadership qualities that you might be lacking in, which I highly suggest you read the book, because the book breaks down, talks about the 6 fundamental aspects that make leadership, how you can identify yourself. Going back to that scaling that I was mentioning before, how if your leadership is an 8, your effectiveness is always going to be linked to a 7. There's a direct way that you can actually calculate that exact, mathematics in order to understand where it is that you're going to be and how you can look towards increasing that. But the first step is always going to be evaluation. So the law of the lid really talks about understanding your cap. Understanding what puts a lid on your success, what puts a lid on your effectiveness. Because you might be able to hone your skill. You will always be able to hone a skill, and you might be able to become a masterclass in that skill. That's guaranteed. But when it comes to anything in this human world, like no matter what, we live by selling a product or a service, which means customer interaction and communication is a fundamental part of business, of making money. No matter what, you cannot make money unless there is a person benefiting from your product or service, which means communication needs to be accepted. That communication is going to be a part. Now, if you want to make a lot of money, if you want to make it money easily, if you want to run a business, if you want to do whatever, you have to be able to inspire and influence others. There are so many different examples of people not liking managers, and the reason is because managers, and the myth of management being leadership, is that managers really look towards managing a system or a process, whereas a leader looks towards influencing peoples through their beliefs, ideas, and morals. So if you can understand the difference between the two and start looking towards more becoming a leader and developing your own personal decision making, then from there, of course, you're going to be identify and influence others, whether it's in your business, your organization. So where is it that you start? Well, first of all, I would highly start if you're not a person who's necessarily, or first time hearing this, who's moving into the leadership sort of ideology, or better yet, you're actually already in a leadership position, I would start by reading the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John C. Maxwell. All of them break down the different aspects in terms of leadership, and it is probably the most well-rounded book that I've ever read whenever it comes to directly talking about leadership. First thing you need to understand is that everyone is the leader. Everyone is leading themselves, therefore everybody is a leader. So if you can understand your own decision making, the own choices that you make in order to determine your habits and your circumstances, they all come from one point. And it's your decision making, your ability to have your morals, beliefs, and checks and values, whatever it is that you decide to value over other things. So if you can understand the importance of that and focus on developing that, then your lid, your capacity on your potential is always going to be capped. But if you can understand that no matter what, every single person is within the reach of success. Every person has the ability to become successful. That is what the book fundamentally talks about, that every single person does have the ability to be successful. Whether or not they're going to reach it or not is directly linked towards their character or their leadership ability, not their skill set. So you might be able to make it in skill set, but that's more of a chance. Because the thing about skill set without character is that they lacks trust. There's no reliability. So you might fall into money. This is why so many people might fall into money, but they end up losing it. And the reason why they end up losing it isn't because their skill set goes away. It's because their character diminishes or their character is lacking, which allows them to be incompetent whenever it comes to handling mass quantities of money or following through with the relationships that they're looking towards developing. So you might be able to make a lot of money quickly. Don't get me wrong. Now you can definitely do that just through developing your skill set. But if you want to keep it, if you want to consistently fall into it, if you want to consistently develop it, you have to look towards honing your leadership skills. Your effectiveness, your potential, everything is directly linked towards your character and your leadership. So you have to look towards expanding your horizons through developing your own personal leadership, through the books that you read, the mentorship that you look into. And that is why I highly suggest that everyone stops viewing themselves as someone who isn't a leader and understands that no matter what, you're influencing someone. Either yourself by default, but every other person has influence over at least one other person. And now, if you can understand that and you grasp that and you do understand that you definitely are a leader, then that's the first step towards developing it. Understanding that you do have influence over yourself, number one, and that's at least one other person. And if it's not for you, everybody's probably going to have kids one day. So you should certainly look towards prioritizing the character that you're looking towards developing. If you're worthy of a person to be followed, if your ideals, values, and beliefs is something that you want duplicated in another version of yourself. Because no matter what, where you go, you have to take yourself with you. So either way, you're inspiring your own decisions before you're inspiring others. And from there, if you can understand that, break it down, look towards prioritizing it, developing it through essentially reading these books, plugging into certain mentorship programs and listening and putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, settling your habits, making sure they're literally ones that you're looking towards developing and setting up for your business and your financial future, then those are the first steps that you can look towards taking. But I highly suggest you look towards the other videos that we will be uploading on the site, on YouTube. We're looking towards doing all 21 of the irrefutable laws of the habits, breaking them down in depth. So if you're an individual who's looking towards improvement or putting themselves in a better position for success, I highly suggest you stay tuned towards the channel. Like, comment, subscribe if you like the idea and the new series that we're starting and what we're looking towards creating. But other than that one, guys, I'm Chrisan. That was Quick Notes with Chris on the law of lid. I highly suggest you keep looking towards the other videos that we have on the channel, but I'll see you in the next one.